I heard the report. The walls were broken, the gates burned, the people exposed. Yet, the palace remained warm. How can I sleep when Jerusalem is crying? I was living in the palace, silk upon my hands, while my brothers stood in ashes, trying just to stand. Comfort built a prison, luxury became my chain, until one broken story split my heart with holy pain.
No more palace amnesia, no more insulated eyes. Let the rubble preach repentance, let the ruins make me rise.
Break this heart of stone, wake these sleeping bones, let compassion breathe again. Lord, begin with me, give me an uncallous heart, one that carries every scar. Let me feel what heaven feels, even when it tears me apart. Break me with your covenant, shape me by your grace. I'd rather cry with Jerusalem than smile inside the palace. You are the God of heaven, keeper of every vow. Your mercy still remembers, though we've wandered somehow. We confess together, not their sin but ours. Heal the broken covenant, restore these ruined walls. Remember every promise, every word you spoke, what you planted long ago. Breathe life into these bones. Teach us how to pray before we ask, we worship.
So I want you to picture, just for a second, the most luxurious, secure, totally insulated environment you can possibly imagine in the ancient world.
Oh, wow. Okay, like an ancient mega mansion.
Yeah, exactly. You are in the Citadel of Susa. The air is like perfectly climate controlled by this massive stone architecture. You've got these meticulously manicured hanging gardens, and every single threat, whether it's starvation or war or just like a cold wind, it is completely locked outside a fortress wall.
It's the ultimate bubble.
Right. You have unparalleled access to the most powerful monarch on earth. Your life is just this unbroken rhythm of absolute 100% comfort.
Yeah, I mean, Susa was the winter palace of the Persian Empire for a reason. It was designed specifically so the royal court never had to, experience the harshness of the dormant seasons. The outside world, with all its poverty and unpredictability, it just didn't exist there.
But we really need to juxtapose that with a reality happening hundreds of miles away. Because today we are taking a deep dive into this profoundly moving session from the icomm.CLASSROOM teaching ministry. It's called The Uncalloused Heart: Lessons from Nehemiah's Exile.
It is such a good study.
It really is. And our mission today is to explore this jarring collision between that insulated luxury in Susa and the gritty, broken reclamation of Jerusalem. The central tension we're unpacking for you is this: how do you maintain a soft, empathetic heart in a world that is structurally designed to make you emotionally distant?
Well, to really grasp the gravity of this, we have to look at the numbers and just the physical contrast. Nehemiah is at the absolute apex of ancient luxury, right? He's the king's cupbearer. Meanwhile, back in his ancestral homeland, there are exactly 49,897 people who have returned from exile.
That is a very specific number.
It is, and they are barely surviving. The walls of Jerusalem are shattered. The gates are burned. I mean, they are exposed to raiders. They're economically destitute, and they are carrying this immense collective shame.
So you have two entirely different universes coexisting. Susa is the embodiment of what the study calls the Citadel mindset, which is all about insulation, safety, and a very curated superficial peace.
Yeah.
And then Jerusalem is the raw reality of a broken covenant. And what really fascinated me in the meeting notes is how these two worlds collide. Lenise points out this crucial detail about the timing. This interaction happens in the Hebrew month of Chislev,
Which is dead winter.
right in the middle of winter. The weather is brutal, travel is essentially halted, everything is dormant. Yet Nehemiah's brother, Hanani, arrives at the citadel with some men from Judah.
Which is wild timing.
Completely wild. Now,
Yeah.
human nature would dictate that Nehemiah, brings them in, gets them a warm meal, and maybe actively avoids bringing up heavy topics just to preserve the pleasant evening.
Right, keep it light.
Exactly. But Indu highlighted in the session that Nehemiah proactively interrogates them. He doesn't wait for the bad news to accidentally slip out. The text specifically notes that he asked them about the surviving Jews and about the ruined city.
And that proactive step is just completely countercultural to the Citadel mindset. When you live in a fortress of comfort, your primary objective is usually to maintain that comfort.
Maintain the bubble.
Exactly. Inviting news of a crisis is a risk. But Nehemiah demanded the unfiltered truth, knowing full well it might shatter the peace of, the safest room on earth.
I want to challenge us on this point, actually, because reading through this, I felt a really uncomfortable parallel to modern life. If the bills are paid, your neighborhood is safe, your subscriptions are active, you are basically living in a modern Susa.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's remarkably easy to stay in that bubble. It forces you to ask, are there questions about our own communities or even our own extended families that we are actively avoiding because we know the answers will demand something of us?
Yeah, the teaching session actually gave a devastatingly accurate name to that phenomenon. Dr. Abaton and Shadrach coined this term. They called it palace amnesia.
Palace amnesia. That hits hard.
Doesn't it? It is this subtle, creeping danger of extreme comfort. It completely desensitizes you to spiritual and human realities. When you're insulated, you don't just forget the pain of others. You actually start to view your own comfort as this divine entitlement that shouldn't be disturbed.
Right.
You stop seeing your privilege as leverage to help the broken, and you start seeing it as a fragile possession to protect.
And that protection just completely shatters the moment Nehemiah hears the report. I mean, he doesn't just offer thoughts and prayers. The reaction is violently physical.
It is a total somatic collapse. During the study, Indu broke down the original Hebrew for the phrase, sat down. We hear that in English and we just picture someone pulling up a chair to process some bad news.
Yeah, taking a seat.
But the Hebrew connotes a sudden, involuntary loss of physical strength. The shock was so profound that his knees just buckled. He collapsed under the weight of a tragedy he wasn't even personally experiencing.
Which brings up a very provocative claim from the session. Shadrach argued that growing numb to national or church crises when you are living in comfort isn't just a psychological defense mechanism. He categorized it as a sin.
That is a strong word.
It really is. I have to admit, my initial reaction to that was a little defensive. Isn't it just basic psychology to protect your mental health? Why is it explicitly a sin to detach?
Well, because biblical covenant doesn't allow for detachment. If you are part of a covenant community, the pain of the extremity is the pain of the whole body. Shadrach's point is that allowing the citadel to make you numb is a flat-out rejection of your communal responsibility.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, Nehemiah allowed the pain of the people in Jerusalem to thoroughly disrupt his royal routine in Susa. Refusing to be numb is basically the first step of intercession.
And that perfectly sets up his pivot. Because he collapses, but he doesn't just stay on the floor in a puddle of despair, right? He shifts into this meticulously structured prayer.
Yes, he does.
And the linguistic analysis in these meeting notes completely changed how I read this whole section. There are 3 specific Hebrew words Nehemiah uses that act as these massive theological pivots. Let's look at the first one in verse 5, where he appeals to God's it said.
Right, which is often translated in our English Bibles as steadfast love or loving kindness. But those translations are notoriously soft.
They're way too emotional. When we hear love, we just think of a feeling, a fleeting emotional state. We think, God, please feel warmly toward us. But the way the session breaks down has said it's much heavier.
Oh, absolutely.
It's more akin to a binding, non-withdrawable contract. I like to think of it like signing a mortgage. You aren't trading feelings. You are trading absolute legal loyalty. You promise fidelity, the other party promises protection, and neither of you can legally or morally back out just because you had a bad day.
That captures the weight of it perfectly. Hesed is a love anchored in a solemn historical vow. So by invoking it, Nehemiah isn't just hoping to catch God in a generous mood,
Right.
He is appealing to a legally binding eternal relationship. He's essentially saying, I am calling upon the terms of the contract you swore to our ancestors.
But, okay, if he's invoking a legal contract, the obvious problem here is that Israel is in breach of contract. They're the ones who violated the terms. How does he even address that?
And that leads directly to the second linguistic pivot in verse 6, which is the word mitvada.
This is the word used for confession, right?
Right.
But the notes emphasize that it's in the hifpale stem in Hebrew. What does that grammatical detail actually change?
So the hifpale stem is reflexive. It implies an action you are doing to yourself, and it denotes something sustained and intensive.
Okay.
This isn't just a quick, polite apology. This is Nehemiah aggressively wrapping himself in the guilt of his people. He is deeply self-implicating. He is thoroughly owning the failure, turning the lens of the broken covenant squarely onto his own chest.
And here is where the chat logs from the live teaching session provided just a stunning connection. Lanice actually dropped this chat insight, noting a profound linguistic reality. In biblical Hebrew, the root words for brokenness and confession share the exact same DNA as the root word for praise.
Wow. It really forces us to redefine what it means to worship.
He really does.
We usually think of praise as like singing upbeat songs or declaring God's victory. But this linguistic link reveals that true confession, bringing your utter brokenness and unholiness into the light, is actually one of the highest forms of praising a holy God.
You cannot magnify God's righteousness while simultaneously hiding your own sin. Vulnerability and divine glorification are literally two sides of the same coin.
Exactly.
So if he has invoked the contract with Hesed and admitted total breach of contract with mitvada, what is the final move here? Does he just ask for a favor?
No, he demands action. This is the third word found in verse 8. Zikor. It is usually translated simply as remember. Nehemiah says, remember the word you commanded your servant Moses.
Which always sounds strange to modern ears, right? An omniscient God doesn't suffer from memory loss. Nehemiah doesn't need to jog God's memory.
Precisely. In biblical Hebrew, Zikor is not about cognitive recall. When a human asks God to remember, it is a theological imperative for activated divine rescue.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it means act upon your promises right now. It's a call to intervention based on the Hesed and the mitvada.
You can really see how this deep linguistic DNA totally alters the architecture of his prayer. We are basically looking at a masterclass in intercession here.
For sure.
Let's deconstruct the actual structure of it because the sequence is vital. Dennis made an observation in the meeting that shifted my whole perspective on this. He pointed out that Nehemiah does not start his prayer by talking about the ruined walls.
Which is exactly what we would do. I mean, we always lead with the crisis.
Right. But Dennis noted that our perspective determines the size of our problem. If you start by staring at the ruins become your entire horizon. They look insurmountable. The Persian Empire looks invincible. But Nehemiah starts somewhere else entirely.
He begins with sovereign recentering. Before he even mentions earthly emperors or broken gates, he addresses the great and awesome God of heaven.
Yeah.
By starting there, he instantly shrinks the geopolitical superpowers of his day into these small passing realities.
Yeah.
You have to establish who God is before you attempt to explain how bad your circumstances are.
It recalibrates the soul.
Yes.
And once he is recentered, he moves to covenant anchoring, reminding himself of the Hesed, and then directly into radical confession. And the way he handles this confession is just striking. Dolores highlighted how Nehemiah explicitly numbered himself among the covenant breakers. He says, I and my father's house have sinned.
Keep in mind, Nehemiah was likely born in exile. He is sitting in the absolute luxury of Susa, completely innocent of the direct historical idolatry that caused Jerusalem's destruction decades earlier.
Yet he avoids any PR spin. He doesn't blame the previous generation of kings. He doesn't blame the Babylonian siege engines. He entirely avoids that defensive distancing and just owns the shame as his own.
He fully identifies with the failure of his community. That is the essence of standing in the gap.
And as he moves into his petition, Maja brought up an analogy that I just cannot stop thinking about. She pointed out how incredibly specific Nehemiah is when he asks God to let your ear be attentive. He lays out exact historical precedents and parameters.
Right.
Maja compared this to modern prompt engineering with AI.
It's such a brilliant way to conceptualize it. I mean, if you type a vague generic request into a system, you get a generic, unhelpful output. God, please help us is a vague prompt.
Exactly. But if you engineer the prompt, if you invoke the exact parameters of the covenant, the specific historical context of Moses, the desired tone of mercy, You are engaging God's character exactly where it intersects with your specific crisis.
Yeah.
Nehemiah is doing spiritual prompt engineering. He is hyper-specific because he knows the exact legal and relational mechanics of the God he is talking to.
And if we step back and look at the bigger picture, the DNA of this intercession isn't just an isolated Old Testament event. It forms the foundational architecture of the New Testament. The meeting notes draw this undeniable structural alignment between Nehemiah's prayer and the Lord's Prayer in Matthew 6.
It is hiding in plain sight. Jesus' disciples were also an occupied people, living under the thumb of a superpower Rome instead of Persia. They needed that exact same recalibration.
Look at how Jesus taught them to pray, "Our Father in heaven," that is sovereign recentering.
Right.
"Hallowed be your name," that is covenant anchoring. "Forgive us our debts," radical confession. "Your kingdom come," the activated petition of Zechor. The Lord's Prayer is deeply Nehemianic. Jesus basically distilled the exact prayer structure that Nehemiah embodied.
And the parallels between Nehemiah and Jesus go far beyond just the structure of their prayers. It goes to the very heart of their character. In the session, Tundi and several participants in the chat made this profound connection. Think about Nehemiah weeping uncontrollably over the report of the broken walls of Jerusalem. What does Jesus do in Luke chapter 19?
He descends the Mount of Olives, looks at Jerusalem, and he weeps over it.
It's the exact same city. It's the exact same covenant grief. Both of them shed visceral tears over a city that was supposed to be the dwelling place of God, but had completely failed in its calling.
This elevates Nehemiah from being just, a simple historical administrator to a profound high priestly foreshadowing. If you read Hebrews 7 or Romans 8, the role of the great high priest is to intercede, to stand between a holy God and a ruined people.
Yeah.
Nehemiah absorbs the shame of a community as if it were his own, pleading the covenant for people who don't even have the strength to plead for themselves. He is prefiguring the exact mechanism of grace that Christ enacted on the cross.
Which really brings us to the most difficult part of this deep dive, because if we understand the history and we get the Hebrew and we see all these beautiful parallels to Jesus, well, it means absolutely nothing if it doesn't radically reorient how you live in fellowship today.
Right. And the session didn't let the attendees off the hook with just a history lesson. It challenged the very fabric of our modern relationships, calling for an absolute end to superficial exchanges.
George challenged the group to stop engaging in defensive, emotional distancing. We are so conditioned to ask, "How are you?" and just accept "fine" as an answer. We use polite, shallow updates as a shield.
We do.
We don't want to dig deeper because we know that if we uncover a ruined wall in someone's life, we might actually be obligated to help rebuild it.
To truly live out the lessons of Nehemiah, we have to develop what the study called structural courage. This is the courage to deliberately unearth the raw, painful realities of the people around us.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to let another person's distress thoroughly disrupt your predictable, comfortable routine in the Citadel. The harsh truth is, if your empathy doesn't cost you your convenience, it probably isn't empathy at all. It's just pity.
If your empathy doesn't cost your convenience, it's just pity. Man, that is a heavy realization. And it connects directly to the warnings the group studied in Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 8 regarding the covenant consequences of unfaithfulness.
Exactly.
Those chapters remind us that sometimes a crisis in our community, like a collapsed economy, a failing marriage, a shattered mental state, that isn't just a random tragedy to be ignored. Sometimes a crisis is the alarm clock meant to wake us out of our palace amnesia.
It's a mechanism designed to scale up the discomfort, because God loves his people too much to let them sleepwalk into total destruction.
So the ultimate question this leaves you with is one of self-audit. Where in your life are you living like an insulated resident of the Citadel instead of a true covenant partner? Where are you prioritizing the maintenance of your own manicured lawns over the rubble in your neighbor's backyard?
The study concluded with a really lingering challenge. We want to pass it directly to you. They said, let the report break you so that God can remake you.
But I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over that wasn't explicitly covered in the meeting. We talked about the Citadel of Susa as this physical fortress of comfort, but I want you to think about your modern citadel. It isn't made of stone, it's made of code. Think about your social media algorithms, your curated news feeds, your gated communities, and your subscription services. These tools aren't just passively comfortable.
Right.
They are actively engineered by trillion-dollar companies to hide ruined walls from your view. They are designed to serve you only what keeps you comfortable and engaged, effectively coding palace amnesia right into your daily life.
Wow.
We don't just naturally ignore the pain of others anymore. We literally buy products that curate it out of our existence. So as you go about your week, ask yourself, how do you break the algorithm of your own apathy? What specific ruined walls in your community has your lifestyle been actively engineered to avoid looking at just to protect your peace?
That is a challenging question.
It really is. It might be time to stop waiting for the report and proactively go asking the hard questions.
Remember us again. You remember David. You remember Zion. Remember every promise. Remember us again. Not my kingdom. Not my kingdom. Your kingdom. Not my palace. My power. Your burden. Your burden. Not my prayer. My time. Your mercy. My will. Your glory. Give us uncalloused hearts that still can weep, hearts that carry covenant, hearts that never sleep. Let the ruins become altars. Let confession become flame. Raise another generation that will glorify your name. Jesus, you went for Jerusalem. Teach us to weep